everyone. My name is Heather Asiandi, and I am your host of Telling Tall Tales the Right Way. This is where we take the elements of every great story, and we apply them to popular books, popular TV shows, specific episodes of TV shows, whole series, potentially a season or two. I'm looking at you, Game of Thrones. Anyway, okay. The elements of every great story. Let's talk about it for a little bit. And we are going to apply those rules to Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Okay. Huge best-selling book. I think like 5 million copies were sold around the world, and it's been translated into like, I don't know, a couple dozen languages other than the original English, right? First of all, before we get started, can I tell you how much I love this book? And we'll get into why, but this is a really good book. Up until the last chapter. I'll explain later in a bit. But this book is descriptive. The characters are so well drawn and so realized. And the sense of time and place is masterful, truly. So let's get into it. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. All right, let's talk about first the elements of every great story and how they apply to this book. Beginning, middle, and end. Delia has those things. Delia Owens, the author, has those things perfectly, right? Opens with a bang. A murder, right? Opens. That's the beginning. Then we go back in time and we follow Kaya. She's the main character. We follow her life. There's the whole middle part of her book, or her story, rather, where we understand how she grew up, the circumstances behind her ending up living in the swamps of North Carolina alone as a 10-year-old. I know it's shocking, but stay with me. And then the end comes, right? So, and we have a very definitive payoff, which is kind of leads me into our who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who. We know exactly who these people are, and they are unique, complex individuals, no different than you and me and the people in our lives, right? So you root for them. You want bad things to happen to them. You want them to get their comeuppance, even if it's not necessarily bad, but you do want like justice. You want rewards for the people who are doing good, right? Like you want all these things. You feel these things for these characters, right? So who's in the story? We have Kaya. She's the main character. Then we have Tate, who is her childhood friend and eventually life partner. We have Chase, who's the murder victim. We have Jumpin. He is like a paternal figure for Kaya. He owns, it's like a general store, but it's on a dock where people, because when you live in the marshes and the swamps, you take boats instead of cars lots of places. And so they can pull up in their boat, get gas, get their groceries, and go home, okay? There are Tate's father, who he's more of like a supporting character. The townspeople in general, social services, teachers, whatever, right? Other kids. But the primary characters, Kaya, her dad, even though he dips out of the story at relatively early, Tate, Chase, Jumpin', they're all very well drawn people, right? So they're the who. What is the plot? What is the plot? Well, we think the center of this book is Chase's murder, right? Because that's what opens the book. It's really not, though. It's about Kaya and how she's abandoned by her family and how she survives and thrives to the extent that she can, given the circumstances in which she lives, right? And then where does it take place? So at the beginning of the book, there's a map. Oh, I got to find it now. There's a map. Oh, I had it. Did I have it? Well, yes. Okay, there it is. All right, so there's a map. I don't know if you can really see that, but there you go. Of the coast of North Carolina and like its outer banks, and how these locations that are mentioned in the book tie together. Now, the reason why we need that map is because Chase is found at the base of the fire tower. The fire tower is kind of exactly what it says. People would climb up to the top and look around and make sure there were no fires, right? And where it's located is not super close. It's not like it's next door to Kaya's house, but close enough. It's in the vicinity. And so like we need to know where these places are located. We need to know why the plot kicks off. Why does it kick off? Well, it kicks off because Chase has been murdered, right? That's the action that kicks it off. So what doubles as the beginning is also why the plot gets going. When does this take place? So now I think this is kind of key. And I think Delia Owens does a great job of grounding us very firmly in time and place. Kaya's dad is traumatized and suffers from PTSD from serving in World War II. So we are in the 50s and 60s in like early-ish 70s for most of the action of the book. He is damaged. He suffers from some pretty deep trauma from his war experience. But because, back then, I mean, we're better now about PTSD, but back then it was all go to war, come home, take care of your family, we're done, right? So he comes home from war and now he's just supposed to be like a normal dude who goes to work and takes care of his family, except he's traumatized, so he can't do that. And so instead, he finds solace in liquor, right? So becomes an abusive alcoholic. When Kaya is 6, her mom leaves. She has some sort of a mental break and she leaves the family. She leaves her 5 children with her abusive husband. When Kaya is, I think, right after that, her 4 older siblings, the youngest of whom is 6 years older than she is. So Jody, her brother, is 12. They all leave too. They're like, we're not dealing with this. So they leave 6-year-old Kaya with her abusive father. When she's 10, he also leaves. He just leaves. There's not really an explanation other than the fact that he is just a deeply troubled man and he goes. And so the middle part of the book is all about how Kaya takes the lessons from her mother about becoming one with nature, becoming a part of nature, not just a connection to nature, but working with nature and making nature work for you. And so Kaya learns to survive. She has her boat. She does take it to Jumpin', because he understands the situation. He helps her as best he can, but he does keep a respectful distance because he's not trying to like get up in her business, right? Plus it's the 50s. So we have to think of a Black man and a young white girl, like what would that have done to him in that time period, right? So I like the way that Delia Owens at least deals with that. The townspeople. The townspeople affect Kaya's life, and this is where the win of it comes in, right? When this all takes place. Not that we don't still punish children for the decisions of their parents, but that is a discussion for another day and a different show that is not this one. But in the book specifically, Kaya is ostracized and she has a lot of bias and prejudice against her because she's from the swamp people. I think that actually is a term they use in the book. And they don't think highly of her. They're never going to think highly of her. So when the town golden boy, takes an interest in her, she's like, what? You're taking an interest in me? Oh my God. She's flattered and excited. And, because all the girls want Chase to be interested in him, and all the girls' families want Chase to marry their daughters, right? Because he's that kid. Well, it turns out he's also a sadistic rapist. So there's that. And he does assault Kaya on a number of occasions. At the same time, she's friends with Tate. And Tate teaches her to read, which introduces her to poetry. And she finds comfort in poetry, but also in her friendship with Tate, because he is almost as connected to nature as she is. And his father is very kind. He never looks down on Kaya. He never treats her really any differently than he would any other person, right? Just with respect and integrity. So we go through Kaya's life. She develops this amazing talent. She's an artist. She can draw whatever animals and plant life exist in the marshes and the swamps of this area. And then, sorry, I had a thing. And so she gets work. This is how she ends up supporting herself. She gets work. Well, then Tate's body's discovered. And she's, I'm trying to think, how old would she have been? Maybe 22, something like that. No, that's not true. She was born in the 40s. So she would have been almost 30, maybe. Chase's body is discovered, right? And she is immediately blamed. It is easy for the town to pin his murder on her, because who does she have that's going to come to her defense, right? Who's doing that? So Delia Owens, as is the case with a lot of authors, even ones I enjoy, like Jodi Picoult, right? I love her books for the most part, but there's a lot of courtroom drama, and I don't know. So it works for this story. It works. So anyway, we go through the court case. It is determined that Kaya was out of town at the time Chase was murdered. Why was she out of town? Well, as part of her work as an illustrator, she has to attend conferences and meetings and stuff like that, right? So she's out of town. She gets on a bus and she goes out of town to do this, right? So that's the story up until the last chapter, right? So we're at the point, Kaya is acquitted. We really don't know who killed Chase. And then the last chapter comes. And this is where I think Delia Owens dropped the ball. Throughout the book, she has created these characters and these, I don't know if they're necessarily plot points, but they're certainly, it's like she laid out a timeline of Kaya's life and who's attached to that timeline at what point. And she does a really excellent job of bringing all those together, the how of it, right? Making it all fit. She also has, with her very deliberate phrasing and word choice, she plops us in the middle of this marsh and this swamp. And I feel like I could hear it. And I could hear the animals, or I could hear the water lapping. I felt like I could stand on the shore and look at the marsh as it stretches out past the horizon back into the ocean, right? I felt like as you go into the swamp, it gets darker and closer, and you can feel the humidity sitting on you like a wet blanket, right? I really felt a warm, wet blanket at that. And I think that that's where Delia Owens excels. She shines by making us understand the difference in dark and light. And she plays with that a lot throughout the book. The marsh is light. The sun shines on it because it's out there as the entrance to the swamp or the exit from the swamp and entrance into the ocean, right? And then as you get into the swamp, that's the darkness. That's where the secrets are. And Kaya is the town's shameful secret, right? They left this little girl to fend for herself. Right? That's a shameful secret. They left this girl. but they see her as being a shameful secret because of what happened with her family, right? So light and dark. I think that she does an amazing job. Even the poetry sprinkled throughout, which is supposedly by this woman named Amanda Hamilton, obviously another character in the book. We don't really know Amanda Hamilton, but Kaya's drawn to her poetry, and Amanda Hamilton is garners some regional renown. She's published by a local press. Locally and regionally, people really appreciate her nature inspired, nature reference poetry, right? Okay, so fine. I mean, you can infer that Amanda Hamilton is probably Kaya, right? Okay, great. Yeah, I think I was choosing to not even like try to read into it. I was just trying to like go through the story without really taking any of the foreshadowing and applying it in any type of like rigorous manner. But then we get to the last chapter, and this is where I have the problem. Okay, so Kaya is acquitted of Chase's murder. We don't know who killed Chase. Her and Tate leave court. They go on to live their lives. The last chapter opens. Kaya has died. She is an old woman. It's like 2009 or something like that. Well, I guess she wouldn't really be old, but older, right? She's older. She dies on her boat. She's out like in the marsh or whatever. She dies on her boat. Tate's going through their house, and he finds the mysterious floorboard. The mysterious floorboard. We all know what that means. You know there's going to be some secret stuff under there, which is exactly what happens. So pulls up the floorboard, discovers that, oh, Kaya is Amanda Hamilton. How could he not have known, right? So again, let's recall, Kaya is acquitted because she was out of town during Chase's murder. She had to go to a conference or a meeting or something like that. Now, I did find a Reddit thread that posited, yes, of course, the evidence wasn't there, but we all know that juries convict on less, right? So, and that maybe the townspeople couldn't, like that was a bridge too far for them. Like despite her being different and, you know, her being less than in their eyes, like convicting her of this murder and sentencing her to death was just, they could not reconcile. So they acquitted her. Okay, back to the last chapter. All right, so Tate's at home. He finds this floorboard, pulls it up, discovers Kaya is Amanda Hamilton. Okay, great. And then he finds Chase's necklace. Now, that's kind of a big deal. In the book, and I think even in the movie, he is seen wearing like a seashell necklace. It is found in the floorboards. As is a poem about a firefly and how fireflies draw their mates to them. And it's kind of a trick, right? And then the poem changes from the firefly attracting someone to them to how this firefly falls until the light goes out in their eyes, right? So basically, she's admitting through this poem that she killed Chase. But how did she do it, you ask, if she was out of town at a conference or a meeting or whatever for her illustration work? This is where I think we're playing God in the machine. And I don't know if Delia Owens always intended for the last chapter to be the last chapter, or if the publishers were like, we can't just end the book with, you know, she gets acquitted and her and Tate live their lives and she dies. Like that can't be how this ends. We need a nice little ending wrapped up in a bow. Because that's exactly what we get. Turns out, Kaya has become a master of disguise, when there has never been any hint that she would even understand or know how to do that. Because for Kaya, She is very, what you see is what you get. There is like no subterfuge about her. Okay. She's about as straightforward as you get. Now, do I like Kaya? I think she's amazing. I felt her hurts. I felt her loneliness. I wished I could jump through the pages and hug that little girl and take her with me. And then when she feels hope, my heart leapt at the same time. And Delia Owens does an amazing job connecting us with Kaya and giving us her inner thoughts and her motivations and her like her emotions, all of it, right? So how is it that she all of a sudden is going to take a bus out of town? So people see her leave. Okay, she left. Changes. She disguises herself as Amanda Hamilton, takes the bus back to town, kills Chase, still has then puts the disguise back on, leaves town, takes the disguise off, continues her out of town business as Kaya, and then just takes the bus back like, every day. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And so my review and my thought on Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens is that this is a beautiful book. It is evocative. It is moving. It transports you, which is what the best fiction does, right? Until the last chapter. So I'm just letting you know that the last chapter, I think that is where we lose the congruency. The ending is incongruent with the character we have come to know and love. And that's just that. So while we do have a rich conflict, right? Not just Chase's murder, but the whole reason, the whole point of the book, right? The way Kaya was raised, how she had to raise herself, how she had to learn to survive, right? By her wits and her will. And we get a decent payoff. Number one, she's threatened by Chase, right? And now he's dead. But also, she gets accused of his murder and then acquitted. That's a decent payoff. I think by adding all that extra stuff, it colors the rest of the book in an unfavorable way. I'm just going to say that. So that's my 2 cents, and you can probably make change. But if you have read Where the Crawdads Sing, what did you think of it? Let me know. Do you agree that the ending seemed a little like not with the rest of the story, or were you fine with it? And why do you feel that way? Or why do you think that way? No matter what side you come down on, I would like to know. So please leave it in the comments and let's get into a discussion about it. But for now, I'm going to leave you. This has been Telling Tall Tales the Right Way. I am your host, Heather Asianbi. And on our next episode, we are going to discuss book 7 of Harry Potter. I mean, we're going to touch on all the other books too, because they kind of, they all feed together. But one particular instance is why I'm focusing on book 7. So join me and I will see you next time. Thanks so much.